солдат, до побачення!
Так.
Евакуації, солдат, 100 метрів, будь ласка, ті. Можна, будь ласка, допоможе мені.
In North America, we kind of think of ourselves as untouchable, but that's not true. It takes one action from somebody with a little bit more power. But Canada is in the same position. We're quite a large country, but with a very small population around the same size as Ukraine, with a very large military power on the other side of the border to us, who is now kind of making jokes and a little bit more serious conversations about whether or not we would be part of their country. I watched Bucha, and it was a turning point for me. I would dream about all the bodies in the street, and it was so hard. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I remember sitting on the beach in the summertime, watching my children play and thinking about the children's bodies that I just saw. I just couldn't sit there anymore. My children are okay. They're okay, and this is never going to happen to them. But how can you sit at home if you have the opportunity to help? Where I was in Bakhmut, and I was in a soup kitchen, and it was just a bunch of elderly people. And the lady asked me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Canada." And she said, "Oh, Canada, we love Canada." And it was like 15 other people in there that started saying, "We love Canada," and they're crying. And I realized in that moment that, like, I'm not me. I represent my entire country. And when you go into these areas or you're part of the military, it means that Canada is also with them. It brings a lot of hope to people. It took a few months to really make that decision, but I came. And I don't regret it. I don't regret it.
Тепер зрозуміло, що ви повинні робити, коли ви побачите ці маркера на 300-му. Всім зрозуміло.
I was a happier person in a sense where I was very oblivious to anything in the world and I was very self-centered. But also I gained my independence and I am a strong woman now, where before I felt quite weak and maybe didn't really have a lot of control over my life. I was just kind of doing this. In North America especially, I feel like we're just going through the motions. Most of us in the world, we're just going through the motions. We take care of our children, we go to work every day, and the aspirations kind of stay in this box. And now I realize, like, me as one person, I've raised almost $1 million for the military. I've been here, I've done so much, saved hundreds of animals and brought in thousands of food bags into areas like Bakhmut and Orikhiv and Siversk and Zarechny and things. I mean, I was driving around Bakhmut and Zarechny on my own in a little Lasheti, and I realized that one person can do so much. That I, as a woman, I have 3 beautiful children who are with their dads right now, which I'm so grateful for, that they have such an amazing family. I really am. But that's why I'm here. It motivates me. In almost 3 years, I haven't really taken a day off because I really feel like if I'm away from them, that I need to utilize this time as much as possible. But it's for them. It's for their future. Everything we do here really matters. And I know that people, across the ocean, they don't really think about it. But it does. It impacts us. The whole world is watching right now. I made a choice when I came here. And to be honest, I was given an ultimatum. If I come, don't come back. I mean, obviously, we've had conversations about that, and it's not a very realistic thing, and my children do need me. But it did destroy my relationships with a lot of my family and friends and things. But I really thought about regret, and it sat with me for a long time. I don't think I will regret the few years that I was away from my children trying to protect their future. But I knew that 65, 70 years old, I would be sitting there thinking, and I would regret not coming. It's something that you can't undo. So I came. It took a few months to really make that decision, but I came. And I don't regret it. I don't regret it. I think as a woman, maybe I'll find another man. But this moment is not forever, thankfully. And what we do here matters. I truly believe that.
We are members of the 93rd Brigade Special Rifle Battalion. We need to give a huge thank you to Planet of People and their donors for this night vision. We are an infantry assault team, and night vision like this helps us do night operations. We are currently looking for 2 more night vision. If you could share, get that out there, that'd be great. Slava Ukraini!
I started small, like buying Airbnb rooms, and I bought tickets to the Mykolaiv Zoo, tried to do things. But I wanted to do a lot more. Originally, I decided I was going to raise money for like a foundation, and then I actually decided like I wanted to take my donations here. So I sent something like 320 pounds of aid. I collected from the community. I did garage sales. I did all sorts of stuff. I collected about $7,000. And I decided I'll come, I'll do some stuff. I'll find some foundations that, you know, I could help support. And I think it was really seeing like the influx of people from all around the world, like big, small, man, woman, didn't matter, elderly, didn't matter your age, people were coming, and I realized like it was a possibility. But when I came here and I realized like all the things I could do. I watched Bucha, and it was a turning point for me. I was on the phone February 24th, 2022, on TikTok, watching these videos come. And TikTok has an algorithm that like when the more you watch something, the more it shows you. And I just was watching like civilians' homes being blown up and all of these things. And then Bucha happened, and it was Irina Filkina and her hand that was all over. And she had these beautiful nails with heart. And I would dream about her. And I would dream about all the bodies in the street. And it was so hard. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I remember sitting on the beach in the summertime, watching my children play and thinking about the children's bodies that I just saw. There's a photo of parents and I believe 3 children. Their bodies laid on top of their parents. And I just couldn't sit there anymore. My children are okay. They're okay, and this is never going to happen to them. But how can you sit at home if you have the opportunity to help? I was originally supposed to come for 20 days, and that was it. And there was a point about 2 weeks in where I was in Bakhmut, and I was in a soup kitchen, and it was just a bunch of elderly people. And the lady asked me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Canada." And she said, "Oh, Canada, we love Canada." And it was like 15 other people in there that started saying, "We love Canada," and they're crying. And I realized in that moment that like, I'm not me when I go into these areas. I'm not me in the military either, maybe in my battalion, but I represent my country. And I know places that are isolated and far away from even the news, and maybe like in these areas, like in Seversk, you get the radio station, it's on the Russian side. So they don't really have an understanding of who supports them. And I represent my entire country. And when you go into these areas or you're part of the military, it means that Canada is also with them. It brings a lot of hope to people. And I guess after that, I just didn't feel like I could leave. At the time, in December 2022, there was almost nobody going into Bakhmut. And when I went, after like the third time, people started going. And it became like a big thing. I was in the news and lots of volunteers were coming in, and I realized like how important it was that like I was going to these areas. And then Bakhmut kind of was starting to get people, but Zarechny had nobody. So I started going door to door with food bags in my little car, knocking on doors, finding babusas and different people. And that became kind of my hub in there, Zarechny and Yampol. So I went home for 18 days in 2023, and I explained to my kids the truth. Like, there's, I explained it very small, and now I have told them that, like, you know, the whole truth of what's happening here. But, you know, there's a bad man, and he's sending people here, and kids their age are dying, and they need help. And I can help, you know, that I'm doing big things. And now I know my daughter, she follows my social media and sees my videos and things. And she says she's quite proud of me, which makes me feel good. I hope that later in life they still understand why I've left, you know. I think they will. But as much as I did it for my children, I also did it for me. And I don't know how to explain it other than I wasn't present. I wasn't present in parenting or in my life, because in my mind, so much was happening here, and I wanted and needed to be here. Eventually, Zarechny became almost nothing. all the people I grew to love and care about were either dead or gone. And I started working in Kherson and Zaporizhia quite a bit. Zaporizhia, I think, is kind of a place that gets often forgotten. You know, it's still quite terrible there, but it's not like this massive push like Donbass. So people tend to flood here, but they don't help as much as Zaporizhia. So I was on the fence about moving to there originally, and I got hooked into Seversk, which at the time had nobody going. A few Ukrainian volunteers with a church were delivering water, but that was it. And I started delivering water and working on with the local community there and the invincibility point to bring power and different things, bringing them cables or whatever they needed, and a lot of animal rescue.
You guys are heroes out here. Thank you. And guys, we need some help with this. This sweet, sweet.
After 8 months of that, you just realize it'll just go on. And
it's never enough.
It's never enough. You could use all of your time, your resources, and your money on those things. And it is very sad to see the animals suffering. And I have a very deep place in my heart for the animals, but it will never end. I want to, especially now, like I feel like interest is kind of dwindling and people are trying to move on with their lives in a sense in other parts of the world, and it is very harsh. So the donations that come in, they need to be utilized in ways that, you know, really can help us here. We have to focus all of the energy on the military. If I ever want to see Seversk or Zarishny or Bakhmut as actual places again or not under Russian control, then we have to concentrate all of our resources on the military.
Це означає не критична, не масивна кровотеча. Понятно?
Так.
Моя.
Да, жертва.
Раз, два, три, 4, 5.
Quickly. Швидко, будь ласка. Перше по дуже important.
I knew Valentine before. I have two foundations, so over the last year or so, we were almost solely doing military aid as far as where our donations were going. And so I was helping him before he became the commander of this. And when he said he was going to do a prisoner battalion, I was so interested in helping. So I kind of feel like it's been my baby since the very beginning to try to make sure that these guys have the things that they need. You know, when you're starting out fresh, you don't have anything from vehicles right down to, you know, extra uniforms, or they had so many gentlemen coming and they didn't have hygiene products and stuff like that. So it was really important to me that we got the things that they need. And when I decided I wanted to be a soldier, Valentine asked right away, "Are you coming to my battalion?" I said, "Can I?" I didn't know if it was an option, you know, but I'm honored and proud to be a part of this battalion.
Main question: why? Why do you decide to join the Ukrainian army?
Why? It's a complicated one that took a long time, you know. I've been here for 2 years and I was doing all this volunteering, but I felt like in a way I was running in circles around these places that I love so much. There's Bakhmut and Zarishny. I grew very close to Zarishny. I started going there in 2022 all the way into last spring was the last time I was into the city. And I watched all of these places just disappear. All of the people disappear. Every time you come back, there's a new grave. I did an extensive amount of work in Seversk last year. And my friend died in April. That really hit me hard, and I really started to think about how I will just always keep doing this. Food banks, water delivery, animal rescue. It is a never-ending cycle. The ecological disasters that are happening right now, it'll never stop, ever. So I think it's just an evolution, you know, to be here with the guys to help in some way, to be a part of the military, to use my resources there. I've spent a long time building up my social media and my following so I can better support Ukraine. And I think those resources are better used towards the military. I always said, like, the aim here isn't to save, you know, Ukraine on my own, but to kind of fill in the gaps where it's needed. So, you know, obviously the brigade uses a lot of its resources to try to supply the things that they can, but there's a lot of soldiers and a lot of battalions. So I try to help out where we can. Like, we got magazines for the rifles, you know, they could supply 2, but now everybody can have 4, or things like this. We just brought some vehicles from the West and stuff like that. So yeah, it's about filling in the gaps.
Have you served in any army in Canada maybe or?
No, before. I'm a process operator by trade, so I can work in like hydroelectric dams and things, but I actually kind of followed my passion of selling antiques. So it's quite different. I never really thought about the idea of military or even medicine, but I figured it was something that I could do with some training. I went to Kyiv for 6 weeks and trained in combat medicine, and now thankfully my commander is a doctor, and he's teaching me a lot more like a general practitioner thing. So I'm kind of on the border of like a nurse, a doctor, and a combat medic at this point. You know, you adapt out here. I'm not sure if anywhere else in the world or you could kind of explore these things without extensive education, but if you have 2 feet, a heartbeat, and a willingness to learn, there's so much that you can do out here. It's kind of opened my eyes that maybe after war I will explore medicine a little bit further if there's time for education.
Готов. Заводил. Да, заводил. Готов. Максимальна висока. Сюди. Вище поранення.
You know, it starts with jokes across the border about how we'll become the 51st state.
Yeah.
And a little bit later, you know, it becomes more serious. And I think that kind of Ukraine started in the same fashion, you know, like where there was talks and little murmurs of things, and then all of a sudden you're being invaded. And I think it's quite serious. I think that the political climate in the world right now is actually quite dangerous for all of us. And I think that we're so distant from even just World War II that in North America we kind of think of ourselves as untouchable, but that's not true. It takes one action from somebody with a little bit more power. But Canada is in the same position. We're quite a large country, but with a very small population around the same size as Ukraine, with a very large military power on the other side of the border to us, who is now kind of making jokes and a little bit more serious conversations about whether or not we would be part of their country. You know, I talk about it now. What would I do? Maybe we'll have to go back and do that at home. I hope that's not true, but Ukraine's kind of opened my eyes that anything can change. It's 2025 and you think that these things are impossible, but it's happening. And most of the world looks on.
It's okay.
Normal. No, normal.
I think it's really easy to forget if it doesn't impact you. We're an ocean away. I really hope that they don't forget. But even my own mother will call and she'll be like, what's going on? Is there still a war there? You know, because the news doesn't show it. And, you know, the new song comes out and all of these things. Unfortunately, I live in a very consumer-based society. And we are just like kind of attached to social media and our own lives and trying to build a future. But I honestly want to know, like, you're building a future for what? The potential end of the world, human suffering everywhere. If you have the opportunity to do something, why wouldn't you? Even if it's doing your research and donating a few dollars to a place that you know will do the right thing, or deciding, you know, 2 weeks out of your entire life that you'll go somewhere and volunteer your time, you can make a huge difference, an absolute big difference. And I believe that here, it's like the first time in history we can. It is the largest crowd-funded war in history. In history. Over 90% of our drones on the front line come from volunteers. Our cars, the things that are keeping our soldiers. We have 21 plate carriers coming from my donors, you know, to replace these ones. Like, unfortunately, like we do get supplied them, but, you know, it's what we have. It's not what we need. So I'm thankful and grateful to all those people. But if even 5% of the people that were looking away actually put in the same amount of effort, and those people that are getting tired because for every day for 2 years they've put in 100% of their time and they're not here, I have a deep understanding that it still impacts you. If you are like us, who are involved in the war, even if you're not here, it is draining. It takes over your life, and not everybody has the opportunity to come. And we need everybody else that maybe hasn't put in that time to share the burden. We can make a difference here. For once. I mean, there's so many terrible things that happen in the world. And people will be like, what about this war? What about that war? Our governments wouldn't let us help. It wasn't safe enough for us to go into front lines. There wasn't the cooperation from the actual government in the country protecting you and all of these things. Now we have so many things in place that actually make it the perfect opportunity to make a difference. Right now, right here. You know, we can do something. I get very frustrated with this maybe mega or just this opposition where it's like you have empathy or sympathy for Russia. And I can't help but think about, especially as a North American, maybe how racism stems from this is that if this was the Taliban, we would very clearly call these terrorists. Yeah. We would see the red line very quickly. These people are raping, murdering, torturing, kidnapping, and coming into places, annihilating everybody, hitting children's hospitals, cancer, children. Like, it is the most horrific thing you could possibly see. But somehow, because it's two European countries battling each other, it's like you're able to choose sides. And I think as North Americans, we are so far removed from World War II, from history and all of these things, you know. Nobody, I can't think of anybody in my life that has like a grandparent who really was involved in World War II that were they talking about these stories and they know all that stuff. Where in Europe, all of my friends are like, this is who, you know, died in my family, this is who was impacted, and you see the difference of Europeans' help and North Americans and the very clear difference of like, here, somebody who believes the propaganda or somebody that's pro-Russian is, you know, kind of an outcast. Where in Canada and in America, we have these very, you know, big arguments and debates about who's right and who's this, when we really don't have all the information and we don't have the history ourselves to really have that understanding. But if you actually just looked at what was happening and thought about, like, if this was the Taliban, if this was in our country, like 9/11 in America, what would our reaction be? What would our reaction be? But because it's Russia, I think that this is the only reason why we have the kind of fight back from our friends and family that we do.
Ейпріл, ножниці є? Ей, ножниці є?
If they truly cared, not only about Ukraine or what was happening or the image in the world, but about themselves, there would have been mass protests by now. I watched Russian woman say at like 60-something years old that it doesn't matter, her sons died, she could have more. Tell me how scientifically that is even possible, but that is her answer. I watched a woman say it's okay because when he dies, her husband, I will drive around my new car and I'll always think about him. These people don't value life. Ukrainians fought for freedom. They died for freedom, and they continue to do that. Russians are worried about going to prison, you know, being put into the gulag or whatever, and they don't stand up for their husbands, their sons, their family. They will freeze to death in their own apartments. They don't care. There's no sense of community. There's no nothing. I don't see how anybody could feel like they're connected to these Russian values. The Russian value is about protecting your government and not valuing even your own life or your children's lives. There's no family, there's no uniting, there's no nothing, and there's no fight. In Canada, we fought mask mandates. If I went into the streets, I didn't necessarily agree with this trucker convoy, but they didn't. And within a couple of weeks, we had no masks. We fought for masks. These people won't fight for their lives, let alone their neighbors, and the way that this is how they will be seen in history forever.
If Ukrainian will fall, yeah, if Russia take Ukraine, what will be next after?
I look at places like Estonia, Moldova. I think first, I mean, obviously there will be huge transition here. All of us will be dead. Anybody who, I very much voice my opinion against Russians and what they've done. I won't be here. Anybody who did that won't. And who will conform will be put into a new military. And they will have all of our weapons, all of the things we gave them. And yeah, they'll go. Moldova, Georgia, Romania, Hungary, the Baltics, Estonia. They want all of these countries. Absolutely, they will go. They're already starting on political levels and through propaganda and media. They're already starting to infiltrate most of these countries. You're starting to see it in other European countries, even in Germany. You're getting a far right, party. It is crazy. People, it's like we want to be willingly ignorant. We just want to be, blissfully doing our thing. That's not how it works anymore. And now that we have the opportunity with social media and all these things to actually communicate with each other and to see this stuff happening in real time, I think it's crazy to cover, your face and to put the wool over your eyes and just pretend that it's okay and we can live in our box. We can't do that now. We are in a defining part of history. You're going to tell me that in Bucha, people deserve to get shot in the street? For people that haven't been here, there's a memorial, stacked up cars. And I went in 2023 in Bucha and I saw it. And, man, just destroyed. And children's toys and people's clothing and things still in it. And these cars were just trying to get out of the city and they were hit with tanks. This is before, drones were really the primary thing here. Look at Kherson now. They're hunting. They're practicing on civilians. They're pilots with drones, city buses, cars, people. They're practicing. It's a game. And you think joining NATO is a good reason to do all these things to the average person? If you look at it, I live in Donbass. I have lived in Donbass since February 2024. Most of the people here speak Russian. Tell me how you are protecting Russian-speaking people when a 52-year-old Russian-speaking man died in the middle of Kramatorsk just last week. How are you protecting these people when you're destroying them? It doesn't make any sense. But for people that haven't been here, they read a few things on the internet. They read the propaganda because they have mass amount of bots and all sorts of things out there, to just fill the internet full of garbage. People read a few things, they make a decision, they're like, that's it, Ukrainians deserve to die. And I can't imagine that. I can't imagine, especially with the things that is happening right now as Canadians and the climate with America, how you could look at what is happening here and not at least empathize that hey, it's a smaller country with the same population, just doing its thing. And here is a big military power with close to the same population as America invading. Yeah. The exact same thing could happen to Canada. And now what we're seeing is what would happen. I think NATO is at the weakest point it's ever been because everybody's starting to realize if somebody invades you, something happens.
There's no protection.
No. And everybody has to agree on Article 5. You can independently decide that you want to help somebody out, but as an Article 5, you have to all agree. You think that people are going to do that? No, we're interested in our own interests at home. We're interested in protecting our own people. If it doesn't affect us directly in our own lives, then we're not going to do anything. We don't want to go to war, but unfortunately, we already are at war. Not just on the battlefield, but information war. There's so much happening right now.
Ukraine, it's a World War III.
I think it's already the start. Look at World War II. There was volunteers. There was people like me. There wasn't mass social media, but people still got on boats and crossed the ocean and came to volunteer before. Now we've already brought our weapons in. We have countries for the last year, France and UK, have started, talking a little bit about they would put troops here. I think it's just a matter of time. It's like the weapons. We know we're going to give this stuff to them anyways, to here. Why didn't we do it just in one lump sum? So we're trickling in stuff. We're just prolonging the war. We're giving them, us just enough to kind of shield Europe a bit, kind of stop and keep the front line kind of where it is. But it's not enough to fight back. It's not enough to truly defend ourselves. And there's so much aid. My mother said, well, why are you getting the guys plate carriers? What did they do with all the money? Mom, it's not money. It's mostly military aid that's coming in pieces of equipment. That money is spent in the countries in which it is manufactured. And then, on top of that, we still haven't received aid that was promised at the very beginning. How does that work? And so my citizens and American citizens will think, well, we gave so many billions of dollars of aid. No, we were promised that much. And then another aid package came out and we were promised that much, but maybe 40% came. And it's not bags of money. And if it were, I think it would help the country a lot more because we could invest in our own infrastructure here, our military infrastructure, our technologies here. You know, we have the capability to make all these things, but unfortunately, especially in a war economy, we don't have the money to purchase it all for ourselves. We do need some help. And Ukrainians are willing to do that. I mean, you see that here. These people, they could be sitting in prison and just let it, 3 meals a day, relax, hang out. They're not having a party. These guys are busting their butts every day, working out the hardest that they've ever worked out in their lives. But they volunteered to be here. They're willing to fight. These people have never, ever had any sort of military training. Right now, they're learning how to save each other's lives. You know?
Оставлять нельзя, да? Нет. Как вы будете идти, потому что я буду смотреть спичек. Как...
Раз, два, три, четыре, пять.